Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. I want to welcome back our film critic, TWT film critic, Daniel Cummings. Last time he was in Nashville, Tennessee, and tonight he is in Texas. He's in Fort Worth. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back, Tony. I'm excited to be here.
We really enjoyed it the first time that you were here, and I've always enjoyed talking movies with you. And you're so well educated in the subject as I see the degrees in the background as well, the Auburn University degree. So I know you're well educated. Period. But this year, you and I think, both feel the depth of the movies better than last year, even though last year had a couple of years together because of some of the COVID delays and all. But we feel like the depth of the movies was better this year.
I absolutely agree. I think this is the first year, 2023, that it really felt like the movies were back with no asterisks. We weren't suffering the fallout from COVID any longer. I felt like it was the first time that I wasn't making do a little bit. I thought that 2022 was really good, but 23 made me really happy.
I had to give off the setting tonight that I was in a theater, so I'm thinking I'm giving y'all that vibe tonight. I hope because of we all love the theater. I want to mention something. Our Jake Barton, we brought in Jake to predict the 49ers, the Super Bowl game of the 49ers and the Chiefs, and I got Jake to participate in the Best Picture, and he's got to vote for Oppenheimer, and he won't be alone. To be honest with you, not only Best Picture, but it should be a great night for those involved with Oppenheimer.
I completely agree. I think it's probably going to take home somewhere between 6 and 10 on the night. I think it's a lock for several categories, as it should be. It's been kind of a juggernaut ever since it came out, and the social media and YouTube being able to constantly show the craft on display and how the film was made has really helped it stay as relevant as we hoped it would be back in July.
Daniel, do you think as we move forward in years to come, the movie companies might use this strategy of their blockbuster coming out either in the summer or even earlier? Everything Everywhere All at Once was an early release last year. You know, they really pummel us in between Thanksgiving and the New Year. But here is where we're assuming Oppenheimer wins. I mean, I'd be totally shocked if it doesn't. But it seems like that's not the norm. It used to be the late releases and the momentum that it would carry, but now here's back to back years of very early releases.
I agree, and I think it has something to do with the relevance of the theater kind of fading. That used to be the way that people saw these movies, and now a lot of these movies have become cultural moments that kind of continue to thrive well after their initial run in theaters, like I said, with social media and things like that. And this is a lot of different avenues like streaming where they can keep their fan base riled up and really excited to vote for them. And so Barbenheimer really hasn't died down as much, especially the Oppenheimer side of Barbenheimer. It's just as relevant as it was 6 months ago. And I'm really happy about that. I don't want to have an awards season and a summer blockbuster season. I'd like to have just good movies throughout the entire year. I don't want it to be slated like that.
You and I are a dying breed. We go to the movie theater, 3 times a week, every opportunity that we can get instead of doing the streaming. Not to say that we don't stream some of these. I mean, I went and saw Killers of the Flower Moon twice, and it was 3 hours and 26 minutes long. I go to the movies so often that several years ago, I was up at the counter and I said, "Do you mind if I leave a ticket for my wife?" And they said that'd be fine. I said, "Well, do I need to describe her?" And the girl behind the counter goes, "No, you guys come 3 times a week. She's tall, she's beautiful, she's very stylish. We know who she is. We know who you are." Which was a great husband, moment and thing to tell her. But we're a dying breed. Those of us who just love to go to the theater, which I just completed that book, and when I was writing that book, I found the theater to be good escapism, where I just didn't have to think about the book for 2.5 or 3 hours, and I could just have my Coke Icy and watch the movie.
I completely agree. And funny thing, this year is one of the first years in a little while where all 10 Best Picture nominees were movies that I fully intended to see in theaters, even before I heard about their Oscar prospects. Even though I enjoy some of them more than others, I wanted to see every single one of them on the big screen. And I had a great experience seeing all of them in theaters, even the ones that didn't necessarily stick with me the same. But yeah, it is escapism. It's the first thing I want to do when I get off the clock. I want to go see a movie, not just to turn my brain off, but to focus on something else and just transported away. It's such a great experience, and I hope it never goes away.
First category I want to discuss with you is adapted screenplay. And this may catch some people by surprise. There are three, for all intent and purposes, there are three contenders. The before mentioned Oppenheimer, Barbie, and American Fiction, which I believe will win. And if you agree with me, I want you to explain to the viewer how American Fiction can win for adapted screenplay, but be in such a high underdog for Best Picture with Oppenheimer such a big favorite.
It has almost nothing to do with how which one I prefer, which one I like more. It's about I think the thematics in the film and what the Academy right now wants to recognize. And I think that sometimes a film being an underdog for Best Picture actually helps it in other categories. They
Mm-hmm.
want to reward the film. And so they nominated it, but they want to reward it for the themes and for asking hard questions and attempting to give hard answers. And so I think that they're going to find a way to award it in this category rather than in the big one. And I agree with you that it is the front runner. I think it absolutely is going to be this one. I wish it was Oppenheimer, honestly, and my second pick would probably be Zone of Interest, but I do think that it's the front runner in this category. What's your take on why that is when it's got no shot at Best Picture?
I think it's because they want to reward the film. You sort of nailed it for doing some of the harder things and the difficult things, and it's not going to win Best Picture, but it has far better opportunity and less competition. Let's face it, it's not up against nine other films in this category as well. And I think we're both going to be right here. I think we're both believe that Oppenheimer is deserving, but we believe that the Academy will reward American Fiction for it, and eventually the Best Picture will go to Oppenheimer. We'll transition to original screenplay. I'll give you the three that I think are in it: Past Lives, Holdovers, and Anatomy of a Fall. Now, I think you're a big fan of all three of these movies. In fact, you sort of have a feeling about Past Lives in some other categories. I must say that I thought Anatomy of a Fall was good, but I thought Zone of Interest was better than Anatomy of a Fall. And those were two movies that I kept wanting to see, and I did for a long time. I hadn't seen either one of them, and now I have. Now that I'm take out that Zone of Interest for a while. I was just using that for an example. Those were two of the later movies of the 10 that I saw that were nominated for Best Picture. If I had a vote, I would go with the Holdovers because I am a fan of that movie, but I believe the Anatomy of a Fall is going to take this original screenplay. How do you see it?
I definitely think Anatomy of a Fall is taking it. I kind of locked it in the past couple of weeks with how the buzz around that movie is. And I think the structure of the screenplay is so clean. I just think it's probably going to end up winning. But my pick would actually be May December. I love that screenplay so much. And it's the only category it was nominated in, which I think is criminal. Some of the
Hmm.
worst snubs of the night were for May December. But I definitely think that Anatomy of a Fall has the momentum right now. That movie took off more than I even hoped it would. I saw it and I loved it so much, but I didn't think it had the prospects that it's ended up having. I'm really glad that it's likely going to take home at least one or two big ones.
Can I tell you that the trial part of it got on my nerves a little bit? I thought it went out on a little too long. And then I'm sitting here at times having to read subtitles, and at times I'm not having to read subtitles. And as the prosecution is talking and stuff, sometimes they begin to lose me. I just thought that went on a little bit too long. Any shared feelings there, or no complaints at all about the trial portion?
I had no complaints personally. I really found the pacing to be fantastic. And I also think that they're releasing the right clips on YouTube, on social media. They're showing the big argument scene. They're
Hmm.
showing scenes from the trial. It's really, I think, getting in people's marrow, and it's going to be kind of whispering in the Academy's ear as they're sleeping. I think it's going to show up big.
Okay, so during the movie, do you find yourself pulling for her, or how did Sometimes we pull for the bad guy. I mean, it was so hard in Killers of the Flower Moon not to like Matt Damon, not to like Robert De Niro. They're terrible people in this movie, and the way they used and abused human beings. In this movie, I found myself pulling for her, even though I felt like you shouldn't be pulling so, or you shouldn't get so invested with her.
Yeah, and I had no idea what the movie was about, so I went in and she was a completely clean slate for me. And I kind of went on a roller coaster where I started to distrust her and I started to root for her. And at the end of the day, you don't know how you're supposed to feel, which is my favorite kind of movie. There's complete ambiguity there.
I'm going to transition from this year's Academy Awards and think back to a movie. This movie, I believe, was 1950. I'm doing it off the top of my head, but I caught it today on Turner Classic Movies. All About Eve. Have you ever seen All About Eve?
I haven't, don't spoil it, but
Okay.
I'm going to see it soon. I'm going to see it soon.
I want you to see that movie and then talk to me about the ending of that. I watched it today for about the 23rd time, and I still just get a big kick out of the ending of it. So I can't wait to discuss that with you down the road.
I'll prioritize it. I've heard so much about it.
And that was a little bit of a shock because usually you've seen everything that I ever ask you about. You know, recently I was talking to my niece about some of the older movies. People call them black and white movies. That's fine. Vertigo is actually in color. Came out in 1958. The American Film Institute has it ranked number 9 all time. Has All About Eve ranked number 28 all time. It's got Citizen Kane number 1. I have Casablanca number 1. Casablanca used to be number 2. Daniel, this is Bogart, Bergman. This is Claude Rains, Paul Enright. This was a tremendous movie. My all-time favorite movie. I would have it at number 1. But most recently, the American Film Institute has released the top 100, has it at number 3, has Citizen Kane number 1, it has Godfather, the original, number 2, and our Casablanca number 3. The airport scene in Casablanca, here's looking at you, kid. And then when he's walking away and he tells Louis, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. These lines are quoted today by people who've never even seen Casablanca. That's my all-time favorite movie. Your thoughts on Casablanca?
It's among my top 5 for sure. It's got some of the best character work in the history of movies. And that's an arc that we've seen done repeatedly since then, where he's kind of an indifferent curmudgeon who you peel the layers back and you realize he actually cares a good deal more than he's letting on. That's been done so many times since then. But still, when you go back to the blueprint, what they did in that movie, it hits harder than anything I've seen since. It's fantastic.
When he tells, when he's got the gun pointed at Claude Rains and says, this gun is pointed at your heart, and Claude Rains says, that is my least vulnerable spot. I mean, this is, but then Claude hasn't figured out, says, you're a sentimentalist at heart, and just, I just thought, that they did an incredible job. We're talking about 1942, 1943. I went to Newnan, Georgia, and watched it with my wife on the 75th anniversary, and maybe it's 80th anniversary. It wasn't that long ago, actually. They showed it on the big screen, and that was a real thrill. And I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you or not, but it's an older crowd watching Casablanca, of course. But there were people who were ready for that moment when she turns around, when Ingrid Bergman turns around to get that photo. So you're not supposed to take pictures in a movie theater, but they wanted that photo of her coming, turning around. She's got the hat on, and there were about 3 flash bulbs. Everybody knew it was coming, so they took it, and
Iconic.
everybody understood. You're not supposed to have a camera doing that, but to have that photo on the big screen was kind of a seminal moment for someone.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see that movie in a theater. Man, lucky.
Put it on your bucket list. We're both 2 for 2 as far as what we like in the American fiction and the adapted screenplay, and the Anatomy of the Fall in the original screenplay. And there's no doubt in my mind that director, we're going to nail both. We're going to have the same pick here. It's Christopher Nolan of Oppenheimer.
I agree. Even if things go in a weird direction for Best Picture, I still think Nolan takes it home. There's just no two ways about it, I don't think.
Daniel, when you saw that movie, you told me then that he can't be beat in this category. I mean, you hadn't even seen the rest of the movies as far as best director goes. Yeah, you'd heard about the buzz of certain movies, but you were so impressed by his job of directing in that movie. When you saw it, you knew the best director Oscar was going home with Christopher Nolan.
Absolutely. It was a moment that felt like the first time I saw something like The Matrix or something like Pulp Fiction or something like that. Just something that cutting edge, like I'd never seen before. In almost every scene, he's pulling off a montage sequence within another sequence within another sequence, all 3 different timelines, and it manages to have coherence and cohesion. I could not believe how well he did in that film. And yeah, I never saw anything that topped it. So my opinion definitely did not change.
That was how, when I saw Spotlight I told my wife and our friends, David and Andy Hodo, out in the Hall Theaters, that's the best picture right there. I just have that feeling. Unfortunately, I should have bet out in Vegas because I was right. And that movie was like 75-1 the night before to win the Academy Awards because all these other critics were choosing, other movies. And I remember seeing like a poll on USA Today or another website, and it only had like 3% of the people picking it. But I had that moment that you had as far as director goes, Christopher Nolan, when I saw Spotlight. It's sort of eerily similar to when I was much younger and I saw Timothy Hutton's first ever movie, and I've talked about this one other time with you, Ordinary People. And I knew right then and there that kid knocked that out of the park, and I had to go look up. And I didn't know at the time that it was his first movie, but what a fortuitous beginning to a career because he took home the best supporting actor that year, and I believe it's 80 or 81, probably. Yeah, it's one of those right there, one of those years. And but that's that feeling that sometimes when you see something, you just know you've seen the winner.
Yep. I completely agree. And I just love Ordinary People so much. But yeah, I think that Nolan bit off more than any director this year did. There was no focus on any one thing over everything else. The performances, the spectacle, the sound, the edit, everything had to be spot on to make it a cohesive experience. And it was. He just pulled off a miracle, I think.
Where we agree 3 for 3, I know for a fact we're going to agree 4 for 4 because the biggest lock of the night is in the best supporting actress. And if you've seen the holdovers, you understand why. So I know you agree with me here with this Divine Jordan. She's been winning everything anyway, so she wins this as well.
Yep, and this is one time, like with Nolan for Best Director, where my pick and my prediction are perfectly aligned. I wouldn't have it any other way. She knocked it so far out of the park. I couldn't believe that Paul Giamatti wasn't the scene stealer in that movie. It was absolutely her. She was so good in every second she was on screen.
She was a scene stealer. The ultimate scene may have been that scene when they're in that convenience store, and I don't know if it's when he's giving them back the change, but when he says like "Here you go, killer" or something. That I thought that was an unbelievable scene. It reminds me of like the late the actor who no longer is with us, but almost famous. I have told people for years and years and years. The scene stealer there was so-called Lester Bangs, in that movie, and he's talking to this kid, this writer, this young kid, and he's sort of advising him on how to do it. And I'm talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman and all. And I thought, he only had 4 or 5 scenes, but I thought he was an absolute scene stealer in that.
No, I totally agree. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was a once in a generation talent. I can't the gap that he left when he
Mm.
died is you can't exaggerate. He was one of the best character actors to ever live, and his career was cut off so short. It was so tragic. But I truly think if he was still with us, he would be mentioned in the same breath as De Niro. He's so fantastic in every film he was ever in.
I don't think you're off at that at all. I mean, I believe that Philip Seymour Hoffman was just that kind of talent. And I kind of love the guy because, people think about these actors, these hunks being so good looking, the Cary Grants and the Jimmy Stewarts, and of this day, maybe whoever the leading men are these days, the Matt Damons, I'm not throwing Sean Penn in there, but whoever the leading men are these days being so good looking. Philip Seymour Hoffman, people saw a lot of themselves in Philip Seymour Hoffman. It was easy. It was easy for us to embrace him. Oppenheimer will win supporting actor as well. Robert Downey. You predicted this also when you saw that. That was another moment. I mean, the Oppenheimer night just looks so promising right now because these actors and Nolan put on such a tremendous performance.
I agree. And with him, the narrative lines up as well. He has a tough story, but he's triumphed over a lot. And he's been in so many influential films, but not quite the kind of role that they're just chomping at the bit to give him an award for. And this is it. There was so much power and so much resonance in this role. It's one that I haven't stopped thinking about since I saw it.
We come now to the best actress. Okay. And this is the category that I'm worried and I'm concerned for Lily Gladstone. I've been praising Lily Gladstone ever since I guess one of your first, the first appearance. It's been months that I've been praising Lily Gladstone, Killers of the Flower Moon. And she's done very well in the award season. However, you sort of talked a little bit, gave us a little hint about Poor Things. Not only is there Emma Stone here to be concerned about, but I think the Anatomy of a Fall, Sandra Hult, is a concern here as well. I still, if I were voting, would vote for Lily Gladstone. But there seems to be a surprise at the Oscars every night, and I don't see a surprise coming in any other category but this category. I'm pulling hard for Lily Gladstone. I think she deserves it, but this is the one that would not shock me if it goes to one of the other two that I just mentioned.
I agree with you, and I think if it goes a different direction, it's going to go to Emma Stone because she has such a bizarre and out there and bold performance that the Academy any other year would be just totally locked in. I think for Lily Gladstone, although she's my pick, the thing that's going to work in her favor for the Academy, and the only thing that could hopefully put her neck and neck with Emma Stone is the fact that it's a narrative. It'd be a historic win. She would be the first Native American woman to win Best Lead Actress. And she is my pick because her performance is more reserved. And I felt just so much more impactful because she didn't show much. She didn't say much, but you could read so much in her eyes. But I think that Emma Stone and her performance being so huge really kind of gives her the edge with the Academy historically.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, and I would also vote for Lily Gladstone, and it would be historic. And it's a great point of yours to talk about the eyes, because if you look at her eyes and her face and the expressions that she showed, you know, that spoke volumes with her performance. But that's the category, folks, to watch, and there's okay to have different opinions. It's hard not to have different opinions when you think about supporting actress and you think about director and some of these, but it's understandable for best actress there, and I'm with her. Okay, I, but I am concerned. I am deeply concerned, Daniel, that she's not going to go home with Oscar.
I agree. And let me just say another note. I can't praise her performance enough, but the fact that she was so reserved in the movie made the moments where she had to break into an extremely emotional moment so much more impactful. The midpoint of the movie, after the big moment happens with the explosion, and Leo's character is looking down the stairwell at her, and she lets out the scream because she knows what happened. Every time I've seen the movie, that just immediately brought tears into my eyes. It's such a heartbreaking performance, and she just had to be emotionally gutted every single day of the production. Man, I can't be behind her more on this one. I really hope she takes it home.
And I hope her performance spoke to everyone who battles diabetes as well, because that was such a thing that inflicted that community and all. And here she is, she's basically being poisoned to death by her spouse. And she was sick, but she was not as sick as she needed that she should have been. She should have been a whole lot better. So but we don't want to give away too much. But in the end, it works out pretty good for her there in the movie. I just hope it works out pretty good for Sunday night. Best actor, once again, I go to Oppenheimer, and I have no problem with Mr. Murphy winning this. But if I were voting, I would give it to Paul Giamatti of The Holdovers, and I know I'm in the minority there, but that would be my selection. Would be Paul Giamatti. I don't expect him to win. I expect Mr. Murphy to win, and that will be fine. How do you see it?
I do expect Cillian Murphy to win. My second choice would actually be Bradley Cooper, right
Mm.
before Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti is overdue. He's such an absurdly good actor. That is how I could see him being neck and neck, is because he is, it's almost a lifetime achievement award at this point. He's been delivering Oscar-worthy work for his entire career. He's been in so many incredible, iconic films. But I do think that Cillian Murphy's performance has as much momentum as it can possibly have after all these awards he's been picking up along the way.
And I believe he wins. Since you mentioned the sort of catalog there, Mr. Giamatti, do you have a favorite role of his or a favorite performance of his?
I love Sideways,
I
which
figured.
Alexander Payne, when they team up, magic happens. I love Sideways. How about you?
That would be my choice. Sorry, Thomas Hayden Church, for bragging on Paul Giamatti, so much, but Yeah, although I'd say I have the holdovers, this performance and the holdovers second. I thought, an actor can only be as good as the ones that he's working with. That you need those supporting. If you're in the best actor category, you need that someone to come up and bring up your game, also, so to speak. And I felt like even though this was a debut with this kid in the holdovers, I thought he brought it, and I thought he got really, really close to getting nominated himself. And you and I talked about the story last time you were on. They found him in like theaters, drama class.
Talk about swimming with the sharks. He immediately just jumped into the deep end. But yeah, I think that given time, this could become my favorite Giamatti performance. Sideways has been with me for so long. I saw that movie so many years ago, and it's just really stayed with me. I think that maybe we just need a little more time with holdovers, but it's definitely one of my favorites of his.
Okay, you and I conference before he came on. In full disclosure, we both like Oppenheimer for Best Picture, but we both have another movie that if we see something that could upset it, for me, it's Zone of Interest. It is the only possibility that I see, and I don't believe it will. I believe it's Oppenheimer, but for you, it's Poor Things.
It is Poor Things. And I can explain why. It has nothing to do with looking at the contenders this year. It has everything to do with looking at the track record. The Academy has a pendulum swing where they like to give it to a movie that is very agreeable, that the audience loves, and they give it to a movie that's a little more artsy that not as many of the audience members saw, but the people who did see it loved it. And then they get wacko and they give it to a movie that nobody saw, and then they restart the process. Spotlight, very agreeable. Those people loved it. Moonlight, not as many people saw it, but it was great and people loved it. And then they went with Shape of Water, a
No,
really weird artsy movie that not a lot of people wanted to see. Then they restarted Green Book, very agreeable. 2019, Parasite, not as many people saw it, everybody loved it. Nomadland, the audience didn't really go for that. And then they did Coda, very agreeable. And then they did everything, or no, what am I missing here? Everything Everywhere.
Everything Everywhere All at Once, terrible.
But the people who saw it mostly loved it. And so
God bless them.
that would put us at this point for them to go wacko and give it to something that people are kind of weirded out by. Now, I think Oppenheimer might break the trend, but that's why I think Poor Things has a chance. That's my
Okay, fair point taken and great examples. And I was, I guess I'm in the legacy there. I was with you every other one, just as you were, saying. I mean, you and I agree. Everything Everywhere All at Once was the winner last year, but it wouldn't have been our vote. I had Banshees of Inisherin, and I believe you did as well.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And 2 years ago, I think it's 2 years, all these years do run together. I had Belfast, and I thought, is that 2 or is that 3 years ago? Because these years do run together. I think it's just 2 years ago for Belfast. Now, what did you have that year? What was your pick?
I had The Power of the Dog. It's one of my favorite movies of the 2020s.
It had a lot of buzz behind it
Yeah.
early on.
And then it got one.
Hey, that happens. There was one night Phil Collins around 1990, the Grammy Awards. He was nominated for like 12 or 13 things. At the end of the night, he hadn't won any, and he finally won the very last award. And he got up there and he says, "Well, now I can go home again and see my mom again. If I would have gone like 0 for 11, I would have been able to do that." But he was able to do that. Why got you here? Name a few of the other favorite, and we only have a few minutes left, but give me a few other Academy Award favorite movies. It didn't have to be winners, or maybe just movies that were nominated for Best Picture of yours. I mean, I brought up All About Eve earlier because I really believe that's a movie everyone would enjoy if they give it a chance. One thing I hate, Daniel, is when I put in a movie for somebody to watch and they go, "Oh, this is in black and white." Like it's something wrong with black and white. Black and white is awesome.
Yeah, it infuriates me. Well, let me try to go back a little ways. Are you talking mostly older films or just
Oh, it
any
can be either. It can be
off and
either.
on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so a film that didn't get as much buzz at the Oscars as it should have was Children of Men. That's one of my favorite movies of all time, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who was
Mm-hmm.
not nominated for Best Director because that was before he was in with the Academy. That's one of my favorites of all time. Whiplash is one of my favorites of all time. And then a film that really tore it up at the Academy Awards that is definitely one of my favorites is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack
Mm.
Nicholson by Milos Forman back in 1970.
75. right? 1975.
76 awards. Yeah.
He won. It won for Best Picture, and he won. Jack Nicholson won his. That would have been his first of three, correct? Academy Awards.
Right.
Because he won also. Golly, shouldn't have. Did he get the Best Supporting Actor for Terms of Endearment, maybe, or was that not right? He's got he's got three though. He wins the year. He wins the Best Actor in 1998 for the year of 1997 because when he goes up there, I remember he says all the way up to this point, I've had a sinking feeling. I mean, because it was such a big night for Titanic, and he won. That was I think that's his third one.
I think
as good as it gets. Yeah, and I don't. And I'm terrible not to be able to name the second one. I was leaning as for Terms of Endearment, but it definitely One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And then he was, if anyone out there hasn't seen Chinatown, I believe that's 1974 that movie came out. That's a fabulous movie. The sequel was not as strong, but Chinatown. You seen Chinatown, Daniel?
It's maybe a movie that I like more than Casablanca.
Oh dear, that's foul language here on Talking with Tony. Tell me why.
My kind of movie. My favorite genre is the noir genre. I just love everything about that movie so much. Every time I watch it, I find something new. It's perfect.
Okay. All right. How many times have you seen it?
Chinatown, probably 8 or 9.
Okay. I saw it like 4 times last year. I mean, it's one of my favorite top 30 films. I don't have it like in the top 5. Give me a couple. I like playing this game with you, Jim, because you named a couple of things that I wouldn't have. You could have given me 10 guesses, and that wouldn't have been on my bingo card. So give me a couple more titles that people out there might find an interest in what Daniel Cummings likes.
One of my favorite movies of all time actually won the 2007 Best International Feature. Back then, it was Best film in the non-English language, I think, and that is The Lives of Others. It's a film. It is one of the best films I've ever seen in my entire life. It shares a lot with Banshees of Inisherin for me in that it takes a really broad range of characters, several of them, and gives every single one of them an incredible arc from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. It doesn't skimp on character for any of them, and it's just about perfect. I love that movie so much.
When you mentioned Banshees of Inisherin, I just smiled because I remember the haunting finish of that and the bombs going off in the distance and all, and the final words said to each other. I wish it would have won Best Picture. I got a feeling if we had ability to see what was second, it just had to be runner up last year.
But it won 0 awards. It didn't take home 1.
Yeah.
No movie ever is going to win just Best Picture. So I don't know.
It was. I mean, it was against some tough competition, though. The way the critics loved everything, everywhere, all at once. And I still don't understand that. But I was in the minority because it won. It won Best Picture. We mentioned Ordinary People earlier, and I mentioned Terms of Endearment too, which was, of course, a winner. I'm trying to think like mid '80s and stuff. Platoon in 1986. Tell me you've seen Platoon. Platoon was highly nominated, won Best Picture, did well in other categories as well. Your thoughts on Platoon?
I love it so much. That was the first Oliver Stone movie that I saw, and it just blew me away. It's one of my favorite Vietnam movies for sure. One of my favorite war films.
Oliver Stone is an interesting director because when you think about like Nixon or JFK, like some of this is not actually accurate in what he does, but you like to believe that Platoon was on the money.
I agree. I think there's probably a whole lot of stuff that happened over there that we'll never know about, and they want to keep it that way.
Yeah, for sure. In closing, I would just like to tell the viewers, don't, just because the movies are black and white, give them an opportunity. Best years of our lives. I mean, I could just talk about it for 25 minutes. Rebecca, I could just talk about like so many of these black and white movies that people haven't heard of because they just flip through the channels when they see that they're black and white, and they're amazing on the waterfront. Okay, I mean, just these movies are iconic.
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men. Yeah, and Hollywood, how about some original thought? We need more original thought with our way we live our lives day to day instead of just going in this group think stuff. Hollywood does this as well. Saw 12, Mission Impossible 19, all this stuff. Give us new materials, new movies. In fact, make my book, 6 Weeks of Summer. Jacob put it up here on the screen for us right now. Let's make it into a movie. Daniel, I always love the time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Tony. I love it too. And like I said last time, I'm going to repeat myself. My wife is thankful as well because I got a little bit of it out of my system here and don't have to talk her ear off.
That's well. We'll have you bone soon, and we'll talk about the Academy Awards. All right, for Jake in Noonan, Georgia, and for Daniel, he's in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm Tony Jones in Auburn, Alabama. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.